Good morning, everyone. Welcome to lesson 3 of our series this week, which is on trade unionism and trade unionists. Today we shall look at women and trade unionism in Guyana. Uh, I'm delighted that you have chosen to be a part of the lesson this morning. My name is Hazel Woolford and I am the registrar of the Guyana Institute of Historical Research. While you will not see images here, I will suggest that you see the images on the Google slides, and they are on the page on which you are looking today. Yesterday, we talked about Indian-led trade unionists, and one of the things, as I said, was that one of the authority on Indian-led trade unionists is Dr. Nanda Kishore Gopal. Today, as we talk about women and trade unionism in Guyana, I'd like to identify the late Eileen Cox. Eileen Cox was one of the most prominent trade unionists in Guyana, and she more or less was responsible for research on women in trade unionism in Guyana. In fact, whenever one interviewed her, she'd always remind you to make a presentation on women and trade unionism. Eileen Cox was very active in the Guyana Public Service Union. Of course, it was known as the British Guiana Public Service Union until 1966, when we had its name changed from Guyana to Guyana. So it's important for those of you who are interested in gender and labor studies in Guyana to research on Eileen Cox. Okay? Thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. As I said to you in the previous lectures, that if you are interested in additional information, you can message me on this page, or you can email me, and I'd be delighted to share information that is available on the series that we have been doing on trade unionism and trade unionists in Guyana. I'd like to begin with Johanna Harris. Carlyle Harry wrote in his work Critchlow his main tasks and achievements, which was he did in 1976, that Critchlow had once said publicly, "When the men let you down, the women are always there." End of quote. The membership of the BGLU fell from 516 in 1925 to 91 in 1935. During this period, women held executive positions. They wore the red and white uniforms like their male counterparts. Mrs. Johanna Harris was elected the first female president of the BGLU in 1935, making her the first woman in the Caribbean to hold a high office in the trade union movement. There were other leading female trade unionists who had supported Critchlow in organizing workers in British Guiana. They included Gertrude Collins, Evelina Davis, Janet Jagan, Adriana King and her sister, as well as Olive Samuels. I need to make the point that the King sisters were the aunts of Ashton Chase, and as I mentioned in a previous lecture, Ashton Chase has a classic on the history of trade unionism in Guyana. So I also need to mention that CV Alert, for those of you who might be interested in doing further research on Critchlow, CV Alert wrote on the life and work of Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow. You will find in this presentation that there is very little mention of Indian women holding senior positions in the trade union movement. Eleanor Sudin stood out because she was the first vice president of trade union in Guyana. It was the Indian-led Manpower Citizens Association. Subsequently, there is Philomena Sahoy, and she also was very important in the trade union movement. While Janet Jagan is not Indian, she was the wife of Dr. Cherry Jagan, the founder of the People's Progressive Party. She worked very closely with Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, and together they promoted the importance of trade unionism as well as the fighting for mass-based politics in Guyana. Hence, their hard work paid off when they won the 1953 elections. While Indian women did not hold senior positions in trade unions, good morning, thank you for joining us. While they did not own senior positions or were elevated to senior positions in the trade union movement, it's important to mention that they participated in labor unrest, and there were several labor unrests from the time the Indians had landed in British Guiana to work on the sugar estates. Okay, and particularly in the 1930s, there were a wide spread unrest in British Guiana and the West Indies. One should, during the 19th and first half of the 20th century, African Guyanese and Portuguese women were actively involved in trade unionism as well as politics. During this period, the Indian women were generally invisible. However, they were on the front line of labor protests. In The Thinker, a magazine, Volume 2, July to December 2018, Komal Chand catalogues in his article, The Enmore Martyrs, An Enduring Legacy, on page 22, the numerous sugar strikes and protests. And when one checks the archival records, you will see that women were always involved. In fact, the colonial authorities at the time called these Indian women furies for supporting their male folk. But there were strikes in 1869, 1872, 1876, 1879, 1888, 1894, 1896, 1899, 1903, 1905, 1913, 1914, 1924, and 1939. May I just mention that in 1872, there was the Devonshire Castle riot, and there's a monument to that riot. Also in 1913, there was the Rose Hall riots, and there's also a monument there. In 1924, the Rheinvolk riots, in which Critchlow was involved, women were involved as well, and 2 Indian women were actually killed in those riots. Indian female sugar workers had lost their lives. On March 6, 1964, Cilla, a market vendor, was crushed to death while supporting the workers at Lenora. Now, sorry. Cilla, you will also find pictures of Cilla in the press because it's relatively recent, 1964, the second half of the 20th century. And if you look on her Facebook page, of course she has since died, but her relatives On the Facebook page, you will see several pictures of Cilla, as well as the annual pilgrimage, to pictures of the annual pilgrimage to her grave. Hence, I read in on the Facebook page this morning, March 6, 2021, the Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union observed the 57th death anniversary of the heroine of the sugar workers, as well as Cilla, also known as Alice. Cilla was crushed to death by a tractor as she expressed her solidarity with striking sugar workers of the then Lenora estate who were protesting the harsh working conditions meted out to them and heightening their call for Guyana Agricultural General Workers Union's recognition. One point that was made quite recently at the Guyana Institute of Historical Research Conference, which was held in last month in June, was that some of the women had jumped into the trench, and it is possible that Cilla could have jumped into the trench as well to protect herself. But she found it, I don't know if she did not realize that the tractor was almost on top of her, but she was crushed to death. Now going back to Johanna Harris, the first female president of a trade union in Guyana. She appeared before the 1939 Moyne Commission. As I said, the Moyne Commission was established to look into the problems with the workers had highlighted and had come here as a result of the widespread unrest in British Guiana and the Caribbean. Now, when Johanna Harris appeared before the Moyne Commission, she highlighted the economic plight of women and recommended gender equity. Gender disparity was also defined by income. Women receive lower wages than men, although they performed equal work. The workload of many lower income women was distressingly heavy. Women were known to work as long as 15 hours per day. Their income was minimal. It ranged from $1.44 to $2.88, $1.44 to $2.88 per week in the 1930s and 1940s. These women survived by either subletting rooms or relying on the assistance of their male friends. It is important that I mention, welcome to the class this morning. It is important that I mention that the women were successful in that the end women now receive equal pay for equal work, and that's absolutely important. Of course, it came at a price, and it came by the bloodshed. Okay, let's look at the first female president of the Guyana Trade Union Congress, and her name is Gillian Burtonprasad. Gillian Burtonprasad was also active in the Guyana Postal and Telecommunications Union. In fact, she was the president of the union. She is also an active member of the People's Progressive Party, and she is on the NIS board, National Insurance Board. She was the first female president of the GTUC. The second president, of course, is Coretta MacDonald, Who were some of the stalwarts in the trade union movement? Christina Ramjatan, but Christina Ramjatan was more involved in politics than in the trade union movement. But I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing her through the intervention of Mrs. Indra Chandapal, and she was delighted to share her information with me. Students, one of the things you will find is that while you will look at the archival records, you will look at the secondary sources, please do not forget that some of these people are still alive and you can get the oral history from them. So the stalwarts included Christina Ramjatan, Janet Jagan, Philomena Sahoy, and Eileen Cox. And as I said, these women worked extremely hard to ensure that women were respected in their various fields. The Guyana Post and Telecommunication Workers Union. The present president of that union is Harold Shepherd, but it must be mentioned that Maureen Fortune had once served as the president of the union, right? So the telecommunications, Guyana Post and Telecommunication Union has at times been able to have women elected to that high office. And so there is no doubt that women have been involved in promoting the interests of women. When you look at the Guyana Public Service Union, I mentioned earlier Eileen Cox, because Eileen Cox is also involved in the establishment of the Women's Auxiliary of the union. But one of the outstanding members of the union is Vera Norton. Okay? Vera Norton. Vera Norton is a stalwart in the Public Service Union, and one does not write about the history of the Public Service Union without acknowledging her role in the union. So she continues to be an important member of the union. Female trade unionists have, as I said, been highly regarded, and we have this blend of politics with a number of them. At the moment, we know Coretta MacDonald is the APNU AFC Member of Parliament. We also know that the first female president of the trade union movement, Gillian Burtonprasad, is also very active for the People's Progressive Party. And that continues. Jean Persico was an active member of the Guyana Teachers Union, and she won the Guyana Teachers Union Presidential Gold Medal, Guyana Teachers Union Centenary Award, the Guyana Trade Union Congress Presidential Gold Medal, and of course was also given a national award. Jean Persico was a member of Parliament, and she was part of the Ministry of Human Services. Of course, in those days, it was not called the Ministry of Human Services, but she was one of the early ministers in the women's section, right? And here is a picture of Jean Persico. Okay, Jean Persico, like Ernie Johnson, were the first ministers of women affairs. I need to thank and acknowledge the contribution of Mrs. Hazel Halley Burnett, who contributed in an immense manner to the presentation which I have this morning. Who were the other female trade unionists that I need to mention? Ava Crawford, president or former president of the Guyana Teachers Union. Jane Phillips Gay, she was general secretary in the Guyana Industrial Workers Union, and she also became very active in politics. In fact, she was one of the 3 women who were members of the legislature after the PPP won office. The other 2 were, of course, Janet Jagan and Jessica Burnham. Thank you. I have mentioned Elna Sudin. Jean Persico. Muriel Livius was a fantastic woman. She was from the British Guiana Labor Union, and her involvement in the trade union movement helped her to become General Secretary of the British Guiana Labor Union. She was the first female General Secretary of any union in British Guiana and the Caribbean. Vivian Surrey was, of course, very active in the trade union movement, especially at the Guyana Trade Union Congress, and she was a colleague of Joseph Polidor. Joseph Polidor served for years as General Secretary of the Guyana Trade Union Congress, as well as President of the Guyana Trade Union Congress. Then there is Jean Smith. Jean Smith as well is very important because she also is a trade unionist who played an important role in the trade union movement. These women sacrificed quite a lot in order for women to achieve better working conditions and higher wages and equal work for equal pay. We also have Philomena Sohoy Shuri, and Philomena Sohoy worked extremely hard in the trade union movement, and she was active in the People's Progressive Party. Patricia Hodge, Marlene Griffith, and Coretta MacDonald all contributed to the respect for women in the workplace and respect for women in the trade union movement. This is 2021, and in this recording I have attempted to show you, the students in the classroom this morning, that women were just as important in the trade union movement as were men. Of course, at the executive level, even today, there are more men than women, but the general rank and file members tend to be women. Thank you for listening this morning, and remember, if you have any questions, you are free to message me. And good morning, thank you. You are free to message me and I will respond immediately. Have a good day.